Aniche, Audanse. So here we are doing the live stream. This is the live Q&A. Nala sona video ni jara aoye. Nekone nsiseka doni ajara aoye. May hope everyone's making it in from the redirect. We'll see how this goes. I'm not sure how automatic it'll be, but I am live now. So let's see how this goes. Hopefully we'll get some people in here. Aiwa, John de Bay, John Bay Young. That's a Mogo Bay. We got a thumbs up. Aube mflera kabumi. So whoever is watching the live, hope you dug what we just saw. We just had a view of, let me see if I can share this with you. I will try to not mess this up. So we just saw here, we had this episode. So dual language, aya ke Abidjan, ni betun kera Abidjan. So this is the Q&A. So does anybody have any questions? Aji, the water. Chando. So we got Arifa San who says something. G. Amba foko G dron. Iba foko G. So we actually just write G. You don't need to say Aji. You just say G, meaning water. And typically in Mondang, there's no need for a definite article. So you can just say G, and that means generally the water. Or water, depends on the context. Iowa. So are there any questions? Does anyone have any questions? Would you like to ask anything about the episode? I hope it wasn't too fast. So that's a question I have for you all. Was it too fast? Were you feeling a little bit lost by how it went? Or were the subtitles not good? Did you notice any typos or mistakes? So I'm here if anyone has any questions. Iowa. Donc, abe yorojuma. Fuli le nana. Linguriozino. Ako, hello. Hey, Linguriozino. Kobe chogodi. Ikakene. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you liked the video. Is there anyone, where are you watching from? Anybody have any questions? So that's what we're here to talk about. So hopefully we'll get some. And if there's no questions, then we'll just go off about our business. But there's about 8 people watching right now, so feel free to take your time to write any questions you might have. Otherwise, here, let's go back and look really quickly at some of the moments from the broadcast. So I think I can show this to you. Let's see. Let's see, got a few questions. Oh, I'm gonna try to not mess this up. There we go, Iowa. So we have a few of the moments here from here. So this is the intro. Does anyone recognize where we are here? And who was your favorite character? Did you have a person that we talked to who was your favorite person? You liked what they said, or you thought that they were very interesting? I always think that everybody that has anything to say is really interesting, but it's really cool to. Some people are more in the details. Some people are more. They kind of have folk knowledge of something that might not be what a professor would say or a researcher, but really they shed light on how things are socially. So did you have one that you liked that you thought was really cool, or did someone say something that you didn't quite follow? So here's just a few moments to get your memory, and then I will check the questions. So this is just to jog your memory of who all we spoke with and that kind of thing. So we also had this woman, and she was with her friend. So you might remember them. We also have these ones. Sorry for not having a better live stream, but I figured, this is a halfway decent way to get things started. It's just to show some of these. And we also have the hairdresser. You might remember some of these moments. Hopefully this gets you remembering things. I wish that this image was a little bit brighter, but also I think it's otherwise really beautiful. Unfortunately, it's a little backlit. So do you remember some of these moments? Do you remember some of these people? And who did you like? John Diara Aluye. And then we did a little outro. Ayo. Nening cameraman. Atogoleko dukure. Inche. Ayo. So let's come back to our live and see if we got anyone that said something. So we had a few other comments. So Lamin, ako inibara mba inche Lamin. Nijarang ikosobe ikakene somogod mba inibara. So you and the work. So he's recognizing a good work. So Fasa, Fasa goes, I need to finish watching. Oh, okay, so it sounds like maybe Fasa didn't have the time to get through the whole episode, but now he's in the live stream. So hopefully that didn't mess things up for you. Maybe it was too fast for other people. We also got a nice comment. Really enjoyed the energy of the interviews. Cool. I hope that they were happy. They weren't too sad, or they weren't. Yeah, I'm glad they might have had a good tone. So let's see. Do we have any questions in here? So I got one. Here's a question from Ski. Ski says, it was interesting to hear that Bambara was considered the root of Jula. What was your comment? I think that's really interesting. I think that that's a very popular conception. As you hear in the episode, a lot of people specifically would say, when I said, oh, where's a good place to learn Jula? They'd say, oh, if you want to learn Bambara, you should go to Mali. And what's interesting about that is it really points to the way that Bambara today is the sociolinguistic high form, especially in Jula-speaking areas. People normally think of Bambara as better Jula. But research actually shows us that it's a much more complicated story, and that historically there are words and grammatical structures found in Jula, not just in kind of lingua franca Jula that you hear at the market, but also in the Jula that people in ethnic Jula communities use that are much older, that we find in Maninka, that's spoken in Guinea and Western Mali, and there are even some grammatical forms that are used in Mandinka, so even further west, near the Gambia, Senegambia, that area, where those are shared both towards Senegambia and the Jula-speaking areas of Cote d'Ivoire and Burkina, which points to the fact that Jula is arguably older and has some features that Bambara doesn't have, or Bambara is the divergent form. So in that sense, I don't think that it's necessarily 100% true to say that that Jula comes from Bambara. I think of all of them as kind of branches of Mandang with their own different histories and stories. But that's just a little bit of what I think about it. Let's see, do we have another question in here? Oh, another question from Ski. So what does Ski say? So hopefully I can make this big enough that we can see it. So Ako, what was the man weaving? It looked like something with fur. It might be the woman. She seemed like she had a lot of knowledge of Jula. Iowa. So I think what you're talking about here, let me see if I can pull this up at the same time. Are you talking about this woman over here? Is this the one that we were talking about? So you said it looked like fur. That's actually a really funny question. If you look really closely here, you can see it's not fur, it's actually a person. So at some point in the interviews, you could hear that this person actually was speaking, and at first when I was doing the edit, I was very confused because I thought that, I was like, where is that voice coming from? And it turns out that this person was responding to the questions even though she wasn't being interviewed. So this person was actually doing a hair weave. So yeah, good question, and something that threw me off at first. But yeah, this woman, she really seemed quite knowledgeable and had quite a lot to say. So yeah, hope that's helpful. Does anybody else have any questions? Was there any other reactions? Let's see, what did Ski, hopefully that helped a lot. What did Ski say? Oh, that's very interesting. Oh yeah, so Ski, I think this is you kind of reacting to the Jula thing. Yeah, I think that people typically think of Jula just as are people that are uninitiated, and specifically that are not ethnically Mandang or native speakers of the language. They tend to think of Jula as the poor man's Bambara, but actually I think that really ignores the ethnic Jula communities and the kind of historical ties to Mandang in general. But it is what people think, but actually Jula is much more complex, and I hope in this video it kind of starts to gesture towards that, even if we didn't get the full story and there's a lot more to say. So Ski also saying yes, the woman. Oh, okay, so I think in this case, yes, that you couldn't tell. How did I get this to get it to show again? Yeah, it was probably hard to see at first, but you can see now in some of these shots you might be able to recognize that it is indeed a woman. So hopefully, yeah, hopefully no one's offended. I think it was a very innocent mistake. So coming back up on here. So are there any other questions? There's just 5 or 6 people watching here, so just curious, does anyone else have anything they want to say or questions about future episodes, the one that we just saw? Ni awafeka nyiniga julakana obeseka okay. Ni moko fana bafeka kumatu babukana ufanate basiye. So this is a really informal live Q&A, so just here if anybody has any questions. And if I don't need any questions in the next minute or two, we'll just end things. We got a nice message from Ski who already said, iniche. So actually, just one comment here, you don't need the C on che, because in Bambara and Jula orthography, the C itself is always pronounced ch. So iniche, you can just write ce. Aiwa. Hopefully that helps. Aiwa. So, here we have a question from a newcomer. Aiwa, ako. Iniwula, my question is, how come people couldn't really point the differences between Bambara and Jula? Iniche, ba. All right, so I think this is a great question. I think that's kind of what, I think there's two things going on. I think in the episode we see that people use the term Jula, and when they use it, Jula itself is a term that encompasses Bambara. So Jula Kang, some people in Cote d'Ivoire, Jula Kang is kind of an overall term that can refer to any variety of Manding. Then we also see people using it to refer to specifically the kind of Jula Kang just meaning trader's language, that is used in Cote d'Ivoire. But I think that, I don't know, when people didn't want to point out specific differences between Bambara and Jula, I think part of that stemmed from the fact that people were maybe shy, or they're not linguists. I mean, I'm a linguist, I'm a freak, I think about this all the time, but I think a lot of people, if you haven't traveled and specifically gone to Mali or spent a lot of time with Bambara speakers, people didn't feel comfortable doing that. Just like if someone asked me, how do British people speak? I haven't spent a lot of time in the UK, so it's very hard for me to really know. I might know a few token things, but I don't have that much exposure. But I still think I might have more exposure than somebody who grows up just using Jula to get by in Cote d'Ivoire. So I think it was a little bit people feeling like they were put on the spot. It was too bad, because I do think there are people that are kind of folk linguists in the sense that they didn't go and study linguistics at the university or anything, but that actually do know a lot about the formal differences. But that's just the luck of the draw when you do street interviews. You know, I could have looked for a long time to find more people. And specifically, if you find a native speaker of Jula, someone who is ethnically Jula with the name that tells you, okay, this person was born and raised speaking Jula in a village in northern Cote d'Ivoire, for instance, that person would be really aware of how Bambara is different. Do they specifically know the words and the grammatical structures and can explain them? That's kind of another question. But I think that might have been why people couldn't do it. Aiwa, bo, nala sona ne seraki ka nyiningali jabi. Let's see if we got anything else here. So we got another question. This is again from Ski here. So Ski says, what would you say the main difference between Jula, Bambara, and Mandinka? Jula and Bambara, I would say that all three of the varieties that you named are Manding varieties. Manding being the catch-all term that refers, it's kind of like saying Scandinavian. When we say Scandinavian, it refers to Norwegian, Danish, and Swedish. From a linguistic perspective, those varieties can be closer to one another than their name varieties. So someone might speak a variety or dialect of Danish, and actually their Danish is closer to Norwegian or to Swedish than to officially what is Danish. So Manding, that's why I use that as a term for all the varieties. And within Manding, there's 4 traditional varieties distinguished. You have Bambara, Jula, Maninka, which is called Malinke in French, and then you have what linguists say is Mandinka. So the main difference being that it has a D, like you wrote it here, and Maninka, or Malinke, does not have that D, so Maninka. Those 3, Bambara, Jula, and Maninka, or Malinke, without a D, those are all Eastern varieties, or there are Eastern varieties of them, which means that they have 7 vowels. Bambara and Jula, I often say, are as close as, for instance, American and British English. They're essentially 100% mutually intelligible, though there are differences, both in grammar and slightly in, vocab and then slightly in grammar, but the mutual intelligibility is there. Once you get to Maninka, it's a little bit further away, and that's when I tell people it's a little bit like somebody encountering American versus Irish English. You clearly recognize them, but if you're not initiated and you just know American English, Irish English can be quite tough to follow. And then, though, you have Mandinka. So Mandinka, as spoken towards the Senegambia region, is actually a 5-vowel system. So it's considered Western Manding instead of Eastern Manding like the other three. And that really is a lot different. It starts to get something that I can recognize it, but I can't understand it. So it's a little bit like German and Dutch, for instance. The main difference, though, is that there's a sense of shared ethnic and cultural identity. Whereas, for instance, German and Dutch people have been kind of cleaved apart or view themselves as separate, and that's been for hundreds of years. In the case of the different Mandang varieties, people might actually feel quite similar, and even in the video, as we saw, they use the term Jula to refer to all those varieties. We had the one guy that says Jula Khan is spoken in Burkina, Mali, Cote d'Ivoire, but then he also goes all the way over and says it's also spoken in Guinea, it's also spoken in Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Senegal, the Gambia. So clearly for him, all of those varieties, Bambara, Jula, Maninka, and Mandinka, are all Jula Khan. So he does see them as closely related. Iowa. So I hope that that's my take on things. I hope that it's helpful and that you got something out of it, Ski. Otherwise, we've been on this for a little bit. Are there any last questions? So I'm going to take a little bit of time just to let anyone focus on any last questions. And then otherwise, we'll wrap things up. And thank you so much for watching the videos. If you want to support Ankata, you can think about sharing the videos with friends, just letting people know that I'm doing this project. And if you have any ideas for improving things for next time or better ways to promote the videos, let me know. If you really want to support Ankata, you can become a patron. So there's a link down in the description below of my videos and stuff. Goes a long way to helping things. And if you're interested in learning Bambara or Jula or Maninka and you can't figure it out on your own, get in touch with me at the website. There's a contact form, that kind of thing. Iowa. So let's see. I have Ski who says, very interesting. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. I didn't know Malinke and Mandinka were different. Yeah. I'm really happy to help. I hope that starts to point out things, even if it was a kind of quick overview, but hopefully you got something out of that. And then we have another question here from Binutu, or Bintu maybe. Do you have any tips for speaking Bambara to family and relatives? I get awkward when speaking it. I don't know if I have specific tips about how to handle relatives, but I do think that a major part of it is just owning it and just speaking. When I was trying to learn French or when I was trying to learn Jula or when I was trying to learn German, I really just had to say, I'm going to speak this. You want to seek out people that are going to respond to you in the language. I think that's what's tough, is that when you have the reflex to fall back on a language that you already know. So people might say, oh, you don't understand Jula, so I'm gonna speak to you in French. That can be really hard, especially for Francophone speakers. So it might depend for you. If you're Anglophone, if you grew up mostly speaking English, you can play off of that and say you don't speak French, so then you have to use Bambara. And in terms of like your own awkwardness, I would just say, hey, just view it as, hey, you're a learner, and even if you have cultural connections with the language, you should just go for it. And yeah, don't let people make you feel silly, because if they want to promote and have people learn African languages, they should encourage people to speak them and not, laugh or think that it's strange that they do speak. So I think you're probably doing great, and don't feel awkward. And it's only by speaking that you'll get over that hump. Iowa. Okay, so hopefully that helps, Binutu or Bintu. Nala sona nijara iye. Are there any last questions? I think we have another comment here. We have Ibrahim Ture. Ibrahim Kodi. Ako ikulunje mba iniche karamogo kobe chokodi igakene dong niye unko sebeli le. So that is the unko writing system. And he says, congratulations or good work. So I'm not sure if other people here know Unco. I did a video about it, so if you're interested in learning the writing system, but it is a non-Latin based, non-Arabic based writing system invented in 1949 for the purposes of writing in Mandang. And what's interesting about the writing system is it was made for really writing all the varieties and creating like kind of a literary standard. So yeah, iniche karamo ni jaring kosobe eske ni ngali bi bolo malo iyere be yorome fenga ni elebe yoro dola wa ni ngali bi bolo iba fa ne be se ka jabi kamika di mika di ambe se ka ke okana ayo bon donc c'est ça. We got a nice little thanks from Bintu. Cool, thanks a lot. Ayo iniche ni jaring kosobe Bintu. Iowa. So we're about 20 minutes here. So I think unless I see any more questions come in the next minute or so, we'll wrap things up. Let's just do one little review of some of the characters that we saw in the video in case that will get anyone's memory going. Iowa. Donc, I'm going to go flay. I'm going to damana yanyorla. Iowa. So there's Dukure Abdallah. Le tunyeng filme. He's the cameraman. And let's see. Ni muso le tumbe. Ni muso ni akuma tunkadinye kosobe. Ako alete julaye ko ale baolele. Donc elle était vraiment très intéressante. Ça m'avait beaucoup plu de discuter avec elle. I really enjoyed speaking with her in particular because she was specific about not being ethnically Jula, but she was like, oh, I speak Jula. I grew up, I learned it. Most of my friends are Jula, but she actually is Baole. So I was really, it was cool to get her insights. Iowa. And then Sisa, oh, that's another one. Let's look at a few more pictures, and then we'll jump back into the questions. So we had this woman here. We have this guy hanging out with shoes. We're all hanging out. Sisa, muso nunu, lu tunye sunguru flaule, lu tumbetai kalansola. Sisa, lamburutigi. Lamburutigi flenie, ani adeu. Nan borai. Cheni tumbe. Nan borai. Ni cheni a tumbe se kumana. Kosobe, lui, il avait des bonnes explications. C'était très intéressant, ses propos. Puis, allez, yere tunya foko, allez, bebo malla. Nga ako fenga damfara bilibili be soro julakani bamanakani nyongoche. I also like this old guy in the background. He looks pretty cool. And let's see, we have this guy who was not a native speaker either. He had learned the language locally, so it was pretty cool to get him to participate, just to kind of show that, hey, you know, anybody could speak. And that was something that when I was doing the show was interesting in Abidjan. Some people say, oh, well, I'm not Jula. And I said, oh, you don't have to be Jula, you just need to speak it. I'm also not Jula. So you could see the way people sometimes are like, oh, you should speak with this person because they are Jula. And I said, no, it's just if you can speak, if you can't. I wish I could do the show in every language, but I can't. And let's see, we have one more character. Let's see if that brings any questions from you all. And otherwise, we will wrap things up. So, we have one question that came in, and I'm going to switch to me. So, freedom is gold. Cool. Can I ask a question? What is the correct version of yoro? Well, so I'm not sure 100% what you mean by yoro. There's yoro, which, let me see, can I do this? I'm not sure if I know how to get it to do a writing thing. I'm going to try to write this. So we have yoro like this. If you do yoro like that, that actually just means place, right? That's a word like yorojima. Ambeta yorojima. We're going to which place. But in Bambara, they also have an expression where they would say akai yoro, akai yaro. And that yoro, actually, I was thrown off by it when I first heard it. That actually is like a shorter form of saying iyadon. So this is the full form. Iyadon, which means you have known it. It's a little bit like saying you know, right, in English. So you'd say, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So iyadon, yadon, that has become yaro, yadon, 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 yadon. So you can imagine just saying yadon, 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 and eventually yaro, yaro, yaro. So yoro, yoro, yoro. So I'm not sure, iyoro. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, but that is the other potential expression that sometimes people think is just yoro. And I actually, if you look in the Ankara forum that I created, there's a listing for that because somebody had searched for it before. So have a look at the dictionary. if you go to dictionary.ankata.com, you can look up the word and see what the spelling is and that kind of thing. Let's see. So I also got another question here. I think yoro is like the English way of saying right. You're ayo. So yeah, I think that bintu, then we're kind of on to the okay, so bintu is saying yoro is a little bit like right, and that's the one that's similar to saying yadon or yaro, yoro, like saying right, or you know what I mean, you know what I'm saying? And it comes from yadon, but then we also have the other form, which means place, and in both cases, we need to spell them correctly, and I think I was just doing that. Let's see if I can get it to do it again. So we have iyadon, right, which becomes yoro. And that's like a Bambara thing. You don't really hear that in Jula speaking areas, for instance. And this means you know, right? So I'm going to put that in there. We have this one. And then we also have the other one that just means place, right? So let me see if I can do another, can I do a new text overlay? Yeah, we can say yoro, which just means place. So hopefully that helps clarify things. And I think we already got a response. Yeah, we already got Freedom. He's told us, so mbeta yoro dola. So actually, if you wanted to write that, you would say mbeta yoro dola, which means I am going to some place. Mbeta yoro dola. Aiwa. So yes, you are totally right that freedom is gold, that this means that yoro, which you've been spelling Y-O-R-R-O, is actually just a form of, let's see, that's actually just yoro, meaning place. So I'm going to put it up on the screen again, and hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, so this is the one that looks like you're talking about. Aiwa. And it seems like Binutu, sorry if I'm not saying it right, she also confirms. Aiwa. So I think this is good. Est-ce que ningali labam be morodo bolo ou est-ce que banate? So any other final words? If anyone wants to say thank you or anything else, now's the time. Otherwise, ne bao fo ka walinyuma do ka foko auniche au kambe. Hopefully I will be able to do a new video and release it in a month's time. In the meantime, if you have any thoughts or things that I should do or that Ankatka should do better, please let me know. Aiwa, auka folido. Let's just take a little bit of time to wrap things up, and we'll see if anyone has any final questions or anything. So just a few more minutes here, and then we'll be all done. Okay. Looks like we have a last question from Freedom is Gold. What is dola? So Freedom is Gold, first of all, it's a good question, but what I was going to say is, can I actually expand this way? Oh no, it still wants me to do that way. So first of all, what I was going to say is you should check out, you can ask these questions. First of all, you can look up in the dictionary. So if you go to, like I was saying, dictionary.ankata.com, go here and you can actually look up these words and search them directly. It's a dictionary that I made and it's made for learners, so that should be able to help you. You also, in there, you don't need to distinguish. For instance, in the dictionary, if you search for do, it'll give you hits for both do and do. So hopefully the dictionary can be helpful that way. Also, if you have a specific question because you can't figure out a word, then you can even post it in the forum. So the forum is linked to the dictionary. It's a little bit like word reference. So if you do a search in it, for instance here, let me see if I can show you what I'm talking about. If we go to dictionary.ankata.com, right, and so we could say now I want to look up do, and in this case that do means an indefinite article. So here you can see, I'll make it a little bit bigger, so that's like a or a some. So yoro do means some place, and then if you looked up la, there's going to be a lot of hits, but here it's a formal postposition. So I don't have all the meanings listed yet, but this formal position means in French sur or à, so it actually is a word that means at or on, so in some place literally. But that's just part of Bambara grammar, that when you say Mbeta yorodola means I'm going to some place. And la here is kind of like the preposition. In English, we use prepositions. That means they go before the nouns, but in Bambara, we use postpositions. If you couldn't figure this out with the by looking it up here, you can post in the dictionary. So if you go down to the very bottom after this, there's a lot of lists for this one. You can see that there's hits within the forum, right? So you can post in here yourself, and then it will add things. So you can even go down to the bottom and say, oh, question, and you ask it in the forum, and it would bring up the category here and explain how you do things. So you can ask a question in here. You can see people ask questions, and then hopefully you would get a response from me or somebody else saying you couldn't figure out this or that grammar point. Okay, so hopefully that answers everybody's questions. I think we're going to wrap things up. We have a final word here from Mo. So it is iniche ika barala karamogo. Ayo, ninjarain ko sobe Mo. Ninjarain alaki sara alaki wal nyumando alakantonyo way. Ayo. Donc, merci beaucoup à tout le monde. Ça m'a beaucoup plu. J'espère que la vidéo vous a plu. Bao fo ka wuli nyumando ka foko auniche au kambe. Kambe wati warela.